Welcome to the Au. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selections of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salad of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday Nights Only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you can get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but for the normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carryout or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. The 108ers and our good friends from SoxMachine are hosting a live show, our annual Opening Day Eve show, Wednesday, March 26th, at the Ramova Theater Loft, 3520 South Halsted in Bridgeport. Doors open at 6 p.m. with panels starting promptly at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are on sale online, $20. Go to 108.ing/EVE. That's 108.ing/EVE to buy tickets. Buy now. This event will sell out. Finally, this show is also powered by you, loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. It's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. He's the editor-in-chief of Sox on 35th and the star of Sox on 35th podcast. Sorry, Duke, Jordan Lazowski. Welcome back to LSU, my friend.
God, I gotta be careful when I'm like. Everyone's like,
I was looking through your media, and I was like, "Oh, this is a keeper right here." I have a clean copy in case I need it later as well.
Everybody's like, "Hey, watch what you post online, stuff like that." It's like, "Oh, for your job or whatever." No, it's whenever I'm coming on this stuff. I'm like, "What's he gonna pull up this time?" Yikes! That's a classic.
You left me a perfect one. I appreciate, because lately everyone their things all scrubbed up. I haven't gotten anything funny. This one was a good one. I really appreciate you doing that.
Oh, I did it just for you. So.
Thank you, Charles. It's been a minute since we've chatted about White Sox stuff. I think last time we chatted, actually, I was on the Sox on 35th pod with you guys, closing out the year. One of the things I kind of wanted to get into, and I wanted to do this in a systemic way. People make their lists of batting orders or starting rotations or whatever. Tonight I want to tackle the White Sox starting pitching rotation. But I want to do it in a way in which we put a lot of thought into the reasons why we're doing it, instead of just like off the top of our head, pick some people at random or people that we like or whatever. Because I've been seeing a lot out there, people saying things that I totally disagree with. So I want to see what you think about building the White Sox starting rotation. Are you with me, Jordan? Are you ready to go?
I'm with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's do it. So I want to start off. We're going to go 1 through 5. We're going to build a White Sox starting rotation. Number 1 is the opening day starter. And my question for you about the opening day starter is, what characteristics do you think are important to put into this spot, especially with this White Sox team? There's no clear ace. There's no Chris Sale waiting in the wings to start the opening. There's no Mark Burley. It's a bunch of guys. What characteristics are important to you?
Yeah, it's a hard question because of that exact reason. There is no Garrett Crochet walking in the door this year. Makes it a little bit harder for you to say, okay, here's your de facto ace. I've had my comments online and kind of gone certain ways with things. And people have brought up good points, whether it's any of the young guys, Martin, Nastrini, Burke, Cannon, whoever ends up making the rotation.
Yep.
Do you want to name one of them ahead of the others? That was one thing someone said to me. I thought that was an interesting way of putting it. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is, just have a vet start it off, like someone who's been there, done that, like
right.
So there's
I've seen that approach as well, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I see sometimes is like when you have a team that isn't very good, you reward a guy for their performance last year, whether or not they belong being at the top of a rotation. You say, "Oh, you did a good job last year. This team stinks. We're just going to give you this number 1 spot right here." And I've been seeing that to me a lot with Jonathan Cannon. Jonathan Cannon, for my money, is not a number 1 starter on a team, but the way he performed last year kind of came out of nowhere. It was, as bad as that team was, he made the team watchable. And so I see a lot of sentimental people are like, yeah, John Cannon, that could be your guy.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, and I think you have to factor in last year's performance. You have to factor in overall performance ability. When you're in a situation like this, I feel like the way I did it, it's a combination of White Sox tenure and just general results. As long as you feel like it's going to be watchable.
Right.
That's how I came to my pick. I didn't go with a vet.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to
it.
tell you who I picked.
Well, before we get there, let me ask you one more question on this. Do you think we have any sort of read from Venable or Chris Getz on who they prefer to put in this spot yet?
I don't. I unless I've missed things, which very possible. I think they've been very straightforward in general about the idea of competition. Competition breeding success, breeding higher levels of talent and quality overall. It seems like they're willing to stick with that from the rotation level so far, at least.
Right.
I don't know. You got a veteran in Getz and a veteran in Venable. Maybe they're going to say, like, hey, give the vet the respect they deserve. But
Maybe.
at least at this point, they haven't been that forthcoming with it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think the only data point we do have agrees with what you're saying there, Jordan. When last year Getz, pushed up Garrett Crochet to be the opening day starter, when coming into camp he was a reliever who hadn't started yet, and it was like, well, we're going to try this out. We're going to see if he can make it. And a lot of us, I won't lump you in here, but a lot of us noobs here were like, what's he going to do? Start 3 innings a game, or are they going to send him down to Charlotte to
Right.
ramp up? And next thing you know, he's throwing 6 and some change on opening day and looking terrific. So Getz has stuck to, hey, performance sometimes will let the person get the playing time. So I'm going to put you on the spot now with the number 1 rotation spot. I need your final answer now, Jordan, and why.
I'm sticking with what I've said online, Davis Martin. I think
Yes.
he is the combination of White Sox tenure among all of the younger guys. He pitched in 2022 with the team. He's been around. He's been here. He's done it. In terms of results, they've been similar enough to Cannon. Now, Cannon did it for a lot more innings last year and things like that. And I think stuff-wise, I'll go on record and say maybe at times Stuff Plus doesn't agree with me. I like him, both Martin and Burke, as in terms of these guys, the best stuff. That's where I'm going with the combination of White Sox tenure, someone who deserves it, someone who can perform and you know is going to go out and give a pretty decent outing.
Yep.
As well as, I'm not ready to defer to the vet route just yet. If it was someone other than Martin Perez or Bryce Wilson, maybe I'd go that way. I'm not there yet with that.
Too low of a quality of
Exactly.
vet.
Like it's too low quality of a vet for me. So I'm going with Davis Martin.
I'm 100% on the same page with you. I would think it was in August last year. I was tweeting, Davis Martin's going to be next year's opening day starter, just looking at what we had left and who you think's going to get traded. For me, I agree with your points because I think the guy you want is the guy with the most upside with a moderate floor, not someone who's just total like crap. Because one could argue Sean Burke has a lot of upside too, but we don't know. That floor could be double A. I mean, I don't know. Sean Burke had a lot of problems with command on his way up to the White Sox, and so for my money, like Davis Martin fills that bill, and that's the guy you want to get the most starts. If you skip a start or whatever, I want that guy to get the most starts, and so I'm glad we're on the same page here. I don't need I don't need Jonathan Cannon to get the most starts out of the group. I don't need Martin Perez to get the most starts out of the group. I would like Davis Martin to get the most starts out of this group.
Yeah, and I think it's just when you're arguing floor ceiling, when you're arguing, I'm trying to think of it from the perspective of who could potentially rise above what is considered their ceiling currently. I think when you look at each of these guys, like Sean Burke could be that guy, but you're talking floor versus ceiling. That's probably the widest of the group.
Right.
I think Jonathan Cannon as a 3-starter or a 4-starter throughout his career is probably where he's going to land. Just the stuff plays as such. You've got a couple vets here and there. You've got Thorpe, who really isn't ready anyway. I kind of leaves Martin as the one guy where I'm like, hey, just stuff in general. He's the one guy where I'm like, I'd like to see more of him because I feel like the ceiling might still be higher than what the assumption is. That the ceiling might be 2-3 starter, but
right.
I'd like to figure that out from a stuff perspective. Like when you look at an East-West guy like Jonathan Cannon, that ceiling doesn't typically result
right.
in an ace level.
Yeah, right.
So,
if the projections are kicking off 16 and 17% K rates, that's not. Yeah, that's
right.
nowhere. That's the back of the rotation. That's the
exactly.
Dependable maybe, but you're in the back of the rotation. You don't have that upside.
Correct. So it's like when you're trying to gauge who might have that extra ceiling or extra upside, I want him to get the most starts because I want to make my best evaluation of him.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, let's move on to the second rotation spot. And my question here is, in spot number 2, do you kind of value additional upside here? Like we talked about the upside on number one. You want to make sure you got the upside. Or do you value more durability with this second starter kind of lining up right behind number one in the way we explained it?
With a young rotation and a very unproven rotation, when you're talking about the idea of variance between guys, I like to split up that variance. So every couple of days, we can reset it. You're going through a 3-game series, and then all of a sudden, you stack up 3 rookies in a row or 3 young guys in a row, and all of a sudden you got a 3-inning outing, a 2-inning outing, a 3-inning outing. Now your bullpen's taxed, and at a certain point, you want to reset that.
Right.
When you got a young team like this, I'm going to value the durability more, simply because I can ask, and I'm tipping my hand a little bit here, I can ask a veteran to go out there and throw 5-6 innings. He maybe gives up 6-7 runs, but I save the bullpen. I reset things moving forward after a potential blowout. That, again, if you have more talent at the number one and more guaranteed talent at the number one spot, I'd change it up. But when you're looking at the framework of this team, that's how I go about it.
Now, do you consider it a reward to be slotted number 2? Or is this more about just like building the structure of a rotation? Just like you mentioned a little bit there with like, you want a little more durability behind the volatility that's coming in front. But do you also consider it like, this is kind of a reward. You get to be the second guy out of the gate.
I think it still should be viewed as such. I mean, it doesn't count as much on this team, but the idea of, hey, your first 3 guys are usually your first guys that you're relying on in the playoffs. Like, it's still in the old, I'm not saying the old days, but like in the old framework of how baseball has gotten us to this point, there is still something to be said. Like, I want to be a top 3 guy in a rotation. Those guys are going to get the guaranteed starts. Those guys are going to be the guys we turn around and get into the playoffs. We're going to be the first horses out there. And there's a little less variability in terms of schedules. You see those 4 or 5 starters kind of those first few weeks of the season, like, maybe not. I maybe won't need you. Great. I don't care. Those first 3 guys, like, no, there's a reward. There's I guess a good feeling, a feeling of pride in saying, hey, you're the guys I want to go with, guaranteed every 5 days or every 5 games.
I love it. And how much of a difference do you want to have in looks between number 1 and number 2? I know Brian Bannister's talked a lot about this in the bullpen, and it makes a lot of sense in like a 3 or 4 game series of not giving teams looks at the same type of guy too often. I mean, I get it. If you have Emmanuel Clase type guy, then who gives a shit? You let him chew him up. But everybody else, you want to flip the looks. How important it is to have a look that's different than Davis Martin, kind of right behind Davis Martin in that one spot?
Handedness doesn't bother me as much. In terms of arsenals, I would like to see, I mean, on this team, your power pitchers are more your Davis Martins, your Sean Bergs. Those are more true power pitcher guys. Everyone else a little bit more east-west, or, hey, sinker heavy, or we're trying to generate as many ground balls as possible.
Exactly.
So I'd like to mix those up as much as possible. It's not going to be a perfect science. But at the same time, I do like the idea of, hey, maybe you see a north-south guy one day, then an east-west, and then you pick between the 2 the next day. Like, just so you don't get in a routine. That being said, everyone's slider is different nowadays. Everyone's curveball is different. Not everyone's even throwing the same type of changeup anymore. Like, there's enough variability that if you trust your matchup, you trust your analytics, you trust your team putting this together, you should still be able to operate even without. But I did choose some variability with this.
I love it. So let's hear your number 2 starter final answer.
I'll give the vet number 2, Martin Perez. I won't give him the opening day start, but I'll give him that next day.
I respect it. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of where I would go, too. I mean, I do think the handedness at least counts for something because it will change up how the lineup construction for the other team. And so just like messing with them at least a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I always wonder how much putting different arsenals right next to each other, especially with the rotation guys, really kind of matters. Keeps the hitters off balance, I would think. And so, yeah, I would go with him here as well. And just he's been out there so many times. I mean, he started as a young man, and he's not even that old of a guy, but he's been in the league for a long goddamn time at this point. So,
which again, good for him. You've earned that right to be one of the leaders in a rotation. He's had some good years, so it's not like he's a bum. But at the same time, when you're promoting a youth movement, I'd rather truly show that in that I'm letting one of my younger guys start that opening day. We are
Get the
truly
reward.
promoting a youth movement. Exactly.
Yeah,
it might be the only one Davis Martin starts in his life. Like, give a kid a chance
true.
to be able to do that. Like,
absolutely. All right, let's get to number 3 rotation spot. This is the last of the likely rotation mainstays, as we were talking about it. Being in the first 3 guys is extremely important. So my thought here would be there basically would be 3 starting pitchers that I think are guaranteed spots on this roster. And my question is, do you agree with that? And are you likely using the 3rd guy who I think is probably guaranteed a spot as we sit here today on February 24th?
I thought about switching it between my 3 and 4 guy. I was close. I'm like, I could see the difference in arsenals and kind of like ceiling versus floor arguments. But at the end of the day, yes, I did prioritize what I said first. Like, your first 3 guys, there has to be some sort of reward, benefit, something like that to show guys, hey, you want to be one of these top 3 starters. Here's what you're striving for. Right. And I think the best way to do that is to give the guys that have proven it, or you want to see the most of those first 3 spots. And that put in the spirit of competition, that should push the next couple of guys to say, I want to get to that spot. I want to make sure that come All-Star break, come anytime we kind of reshuffle the rotation, I know where I'm going to be, and that's the end of it.
I love it. So I'm going to have you go right for it. What's your final answer for the number 3 starter?
Jonathan Cannon. The kid earned it last year. The kid earned everyone's consideration for opening day starter. Yep. I just think in terms of most starts, I don't want him getting the most starts. But I think when you talk about like even resetting the rotation too, I feel like this is a good place where he'd kind of just reset. You know, you're probably going to get 4 or 5 out of him at the very least.
Right.
Putting him right after Perez, who's also supposed to be that kind of person, is like where I was going to switch 3 and 4. But I ultimately decided on these are the 3 guys I want to get the most starts this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cannon earned it. He did earn it because he came up initially. Then he was sent back down. And they kind of had him rework his repertoire on the fly last year and had him kind of pitching a little differently than he was used to. He was not only, smart enough, but athletic enough to pull all that off. It makes me wondering, Jordan, we look at a guy like that and you think, well, it's a pedestrian strikeout rate and it's a big guy, but it's not a guy who throws particularly hard. But he did have to rework that on the fly. Is there potentially more upside looking into 2025 where you're like, oh, okay, now that he's comfortable pitching the way that he has because he got through a season like that and he didn't look too bad doing so. Do you think there's some kind of a little additional upside there, even though we kind of think he's probably the 4th starter-ish type guy?
Yeah, because he throws harder than I think I anticipated. He can run it up there 95 to 97, and 95 to 97 with a little bit of sink, a little bit of run on it. That's still a high-level caliber starter. Again, it's not when you look at your aces around the league, these are high strikeout guys who are just going to be day in, day out. Even when they don't have their best stuff, it's still good enough to get you through. That's why, back when Dylan Cease was still struggling, it's like, yes, but even on his bad days, he finds a way. And it's because when your stuff is that good, you can get away with your bad shit every once in a while. When Jonathan Cannon doesn't have his best stuff, that's when he looks like that 4 or 5 starter again. It's just like he has to have it every day. The days that he doesn't is where it's like you want to limit those as much as possible. Obviously easier said than done, but yeah, I think there's more upside, but at the same time, we'll see what the arsenal looks like. I'm encouraged by how hard he throws and how much everything moves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Especially when the goal is getting weak contact out of his profile, and it seems to be that he's capable of doing that, and he was capable of doing that down stretch. I mean, I remember when he came back and he threw a 3-inning save. I was like, "Oh shit, what is this?"
Exactly.
He looked damn good in that spot. I was like, "Oh, this is encouraging here." And then obviously this starts to continue. Question quickly from the chat. Matty Mitch says, "What's Jordan's general rule of thumb when to bring up a starting pitcher from the minors? Seems easier for position players to learn at the big league level rather than pitchers, maybe not." And this is a poignant question given there is going to be a conveyor belt of young starting pitchers coming up over the next couple of years and making their first starts, or maybe not their first starts, maybe in Nick Nastrini and some of these other guys that their new chance at starting again. So what's your general rule here, Jordan?
I like the idea, and I think this is something Bannister said last year, of bringing those guys up and putting them in the bullpen. Getting used to a major league routine, getting used to, hey, work some sim games early on. Because it is harder to learn at the major league level as a pitcher, as a starter especially. If you have a bad first inning and your stuff just is not there that day, you're 30 pitches and done. Like, you don't have what they have in spring training where Shane Smith can have a rough first inning. Let's pull you real quick and send you back out there. Like,
and then you got almost a week to think about it too.
Exactly. And now you got to sit on it for a week too. You're like, damn, is that what I got at this level? So I like the idea of a bullpen role where it's a multi-inning role. Maybe have an opener and then you bring them in towards the bottom of the lineup just to get comfortable. But it is harder to learn at that level, which is why, at least starting out and getting into the routine, what's it like to be a big leaguer? What's it like to come to the field every day? What's it like to, what's my pregame ritual? Is it going to change at all? Do I need to do different things? Like, there's a lot more that goes into it. Easing them in that way.
Am I driving in on 9094? Am I taking the streets? Am I jumping in an Uber? Or am I jumping on the red line?
Exactly. Like all these little things that go into, I mean, pitchers are, even I coach younger guys, but pitchers are just a different breed. Like, I know it's always a joke, but I've got this one guy. He's our best pitcher, one of the best pitchers I've ever seen throw. Like, true could be D1 arm.
Oh, damn.
It'll be 3 minutes before the game. I'm like, are you ready? He's like, I will be. And then he goes out there and shoves. I'm okay. Like, I'm like, all right. But like 3 minutes before the game, and you're like, I just got finished throwing or whatever. I'm like, what are you? All right, if it works. But it's that same idea of you have to find what your routine is going to be, what's going to work best for you. And getting away with one thing at AAA might not work in the major leagues. It's a good question. It's a really, really good question. And I think my short answer is ease it in through that bullpen role, and I think that's something Bannister has said as well.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of it last year. I know how Iriarte came up. And actually, they brought Nastrini back up, too, again, to get him reacclimated in the bullpen, see if the command was there. So they did use it last year. All right, rotation spot number 4. When I look at this, I asked the question, is it volatility versus floor? Do you want a more volatile guy here in the number 4 spot than in the number 5 spot, Jordan?
Yes, I prefer to have that 5 guy. If anyone's watched like Foolish Baseball, he has this video. It's on the Chad Innings Eater, is what he calls it. The person who just goes out, has like a 4.50 ERA, but you know you're getting 180 innings out of him. I like, if I'm not going to have like an ace level 1 through 5, I want that guy in my 5 spot. That's my reset. That's where, hey, you're my 5 guy. You're going to go throw till I get tired, and then we're going to reset the rotation the next day if we need to.
Love it.
So I prefer, if you're going to have a more volatile arm, 3 or 4 is where I'd usually put them. In this case, I settle on a volatile arm at 4.
I love it. And how much do you think this spot could potentially, I mean, you're going to have a decision to make here in a second, but how much do you think this spot right here gets actually settled in spring training, where they're going to look at a lot of arms roll through here? Do you think it's pretty much this guy has it unless he stinks, or do you think that there is some opportunity for someone to pop up out of the group and end up in this 4 spot?
There is some opportunity, but the guy I chose certainly has a leg up from the standpoint of has shown success at the major level, even a small fraction of innings. I think the pride, or not the pride, but the bullet point of he has shown he can handle this. Is what ultimately leads me to say, hey, I'm choosing him. I want to see more of him. And I think he has a leg up because of the success.
I love it. So I'm going to make you answer. Final answer. Who's your number 4 starter?
Sean Burke.
Sean Burke.
He could be an ace. He could never find the strike zone again. But I think because in that limited time last year, he had some success. I think the guys like Nastrini, who I considered, didn't have that.
Right,
Iriarte, I don't think he's ready. Shane Smith, Rule 5 guy, we can talk about him. Owen White really has never experienced that success.
Right.
I think he has a leg up on all of those guys who might be considered. And I'd leave him there at least to start, because when you're talking about the highs and lows, ceilings and floors, like he might have the highest ceiling. And I'd want to make sure I still get, of this group, I want to get him the innings. That being said, if it really doesn't work out, I can plug someone else in. and then with my number 5 guy to start, I'll just reset the rotation or help the bullpen essentially and reset the next game.
That's funny about Sean Burke is I gave Ian Eskridge hell because the Future Sox guys didn't even have him on their top 30 of midseason last year, and I was like, what the fuck? What happened to Sean Burke? And then he comes up in September and shoves. And next thing you know, Keith Law's got him on the just missed and a bunch of like. There's some whispers now, like he's like a borderline. He's just outside the top 100, and it's like he came out of nowhere, kind of. Well, even though we've known about him for years, kind of.
He's such a horse. It's like you look at it, it's like, yeah, that's a major league starting pitcher, 6-something, 200 pound. Like,
and they shot him up the farm. Like he was in AAA before you knew it. And it was I know he's a college draft, but still, I mean, he shot up the ranks there.
Right. So it's a certain point you got to catch up still to. Again, maybe you moved him too fast. I'm glad they kind of figured out and like, hey, we might have moved this too fast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of reset those expectations. I think that's where people are like, oh yeah, this guy was on our radar a couple of years ago when they drafted him. Now he's back on the radar after resetting, essentially.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to number 5. This is just the whoever's left. This is Mr. Anonymous. Do you dare put the Rule 5 selection here? I know he had a tough go of it today. I don't want to hold that against him already. Just one bad inning. What is that? And he wasn't he didn't have all the earned runs on him in that first inning. But would you put a Shane Smith here, or kind of what would you mentioned that you're looking for someone who would eat some innings in this 5 spot? And I think that makes sense with a young group like this. And not wanting to burn the shit out of your bullpen. I mean, Prelander Barroa is already down. Exactly. We don't know kind of when he's going to be back, and so that makes it a little tenuous. So, who are you? What's the thought here at number 5? Would you put the Rule 5 guy in here?
No, I would not. I would want to keep him though. He in terms of stuff, I think it could play up in the bullpen. I think you saw the Brewers use him in both the starting and relieving role. He's got a little bit of, I watched him today, a little Michael Kopech in his mechanics where it's like, it's very like funk. It's like, it's fast, it's moving, it's a little funky at times. I'm like, it looks like I'm watching Kopech throw. Now, the stuff isn't the same, but I would like to keep him around. He's 24, 25 years old. I don't think there's much left to get out of him from a minor league level.
Yep.
And I don't think I'd rather pick your 30-something-year-old reliever and insert them here more than I like to see him. I think this is the exact type of team you keep a borderline Rule 5 guy, almost like he might be a quad A guy, but I'd at least like to keep him because I think you can always find an extra reliever if this really doesn't work out. Yeah,
you'd hate to see them hand back, especially in a situation where the bullpen is hardly set. I mean, there's a lot of fun guys hanging around there, like my guy Penn Murphy. He's going to be a B-full favorite. He's throwing all kinds of bullshit up there, and they're swinging at it, and he's striking guys out. It's like that was 74 miles an hour. I'm like, this is going to be my guy. I can't wait.
Mariners fans loved him for a couple of years when he was there. Like, I'm glad people are starting to figure this out. That was a good pickup. I'm surprised that a good team didn't want him because like that's a pretty decent pickup. Yeah. For a guy that just kind of, like you said, just kind of throws junk up there and it works. It works,
exactly. So you said before you wanted the bull, you wanted the Chad number 5. Is that what you call him? The 450 ERA and 180 innings. Who is that amongst the group, Jordan? Who's your guy?
For now, it's Bryce Wilson.
And he's a husky build as well. Yeah. He can handle that from a physical standpoint.
And the thing about this spot, too, is like it's not long until Drew Thorpe is back, right? Like he's going to be one who has to get his innings. He's going to have to be one that comes back. I don't know how I would shuffle this. Honestly, I might keep the rotation the same if it was Thorpe instead of Wilson, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I know a lot of fans love Drew Thorpe. I don't love him yet. I don't yet. I want to love him.
What don't you love about him? Let's get that out there because he was very effective. Obviously, BABIP induced, but that's how a guy like that is kind of gonna be effective when you're throwing that many changeups, right? So what's the reasons why you don't like him so far, Jordan?
My concern is the same with like the Jonathan Canner. Like when you don't have your best stuff, you better watch out. Like you're not gonna pull a Dylan Cease or a Crochet and get through 5 innings of 3 runs. Right. You're going to have a 7-8 run outing. It's going to be the 3rd inning and you're done and you're already down 7-8 runs. It's kind of the equivalent on the batting side is like the craze over on base percentage. Like at the very least, when you're not hitting, when something's not going well, your plate discipline that typically doesn't fall away.
Right.
When things aren't going well on the pitching side, when maybe just your slider isn't as sharp as usual, the fastball's a tick off, and or you just can't locate it, the general stuff still falls. It still falls under your umbrella, essentially. It's like you still have
Right.
that to fall back on. Thorpe, if he comes out throwing 93 to 95, now it's a completely different conversation. If it's going to be 89 to 91, it's like, and you saw, it's like
precise.
when Giolito, exactly, you got to be precise. When Giolito lost that good fastball,
yeah, he was in trouble.
Never the same.
Yeah.
Once he lost his fastball, the fastball changeup combo, which is not the same thing anymore. And I didn't love having him as a Thorpe as a headliner for the C Steel. It is what it is.
Right.
He's still a major league quality starting pitcher. He's still going to slot into that 3 through 5. If he comes in throwing 93 to 95, completely different conversation. But I need to see that first, and then I'll feel better. So for now, the Thorpe I know would still slot in as number 5 in my rotation.
All right. So Bryce Wilson to start. Drew Thorpe once he gets there. So we'll run it right back down real quickly here. 1 was Davis Martin. 2, Martin Perez. 3, Jonathan Cannon. 4, Sean Burke. 5, Bryce Wilson. Waiting on Drew Thorpe. Couple more questions here with regards to the White Sox and the starting rotation. The White Sox have 2 premium prospects, left-handed pitching prospects in the minor leagues, in Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz. Do either of them make a start for the big club in 2025 for you, Jordan? Why?
Probably not.
Okay.
Selfishly, from a GM perspective, I'm not sure I would want to start either of their service time clocks. As terrible as that sounds, like it's part of the business of baseball.
Sure.
I would not want to have Hagen Smith or Noah Schultz start throwing their innings now, and this team's probably not good for another 2 years at the very earliest. It's like, why would I want to waste those bullets on bad teams? For Noah Schultz, I think they're just going to slow. If one of them made starts, it would be Hagen Smith.
Okay.
Noah Schultz, I feel like they're just going to slow burn it. Like, hey, this is a tall, lanky kid that's probably still growing into his body. Let's slow play this.
He grew an inch. He's 6'10" now.
Exactly. It's like, let's make sure he can start every 5 days, throw 100-something innings this year, and then we'll go from there. Hagen Smith's a little bit more polished, probably doesn't need that.
Right.
Could be a guy that fills a bullpen role if really needed at some point throughout the year, kind of what they did with Iriarte towards the end of the year last year. If you really wanted to push him, you could. I'd give it a 10 to 15% chance, and I personally probably would not do it.
Okay.
Simply because, I mean, the foundation is in place. Like, I'm not worried about, I don't like the coaching staff. I don't like the pitching coaches. Like, the foundation's very clearly in place. It almost comes down to it's the worst part, but the service time argument. I mean, is it really worth seeing this
Start
now?
the clock.
Exactly. Like, are you sure? If you're sure, fine. But
Yeah.
everyone else they kind of started it with, the Thorpes, Cannon, all these guys, we talk about them and we keep saying, like, we don't have a stud yet.
No.
When
that's
you
true.
start the clock on the stud or the presumed stud, you better be sure it's time to go. And I don't think they're there yet.
So you don't believe in there's no such thing as a pitching prospect thought process where if the guy's getting everyone out, if Hagen Smith lights up the minor leagues and by August he's smoked everyone and it looks like he's ready, you're still going to be like, you know what? Why don't you take the last month off, big dog? We'll see you, in 2026.
I could be convinced. Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I could be convinced. It'd be like a bullpen thing where it's a September call up.
Right.
And
Just get a little
see
taste of them,
Exactly. Get a little taste. I'd feel comfortable with that. I could see the problem is I could see that very well happening. And they're like, let's just have them skip AAA. They've done that a couple times.
Right.
I could see them doing that. I just don't think the benefit is there for that. Have him spend September with the team on like the taxi squad or whatever. Have him spend it with Bannister and Katz religiously. Like, if you want to do that, cool. I just don't think it's worth burning the clock at the major league level for a team that's not going to win too many games this year.
Hopefully at least 50.
Trust me, you and me both.
Yeah, exactly. Last question on the starting pitchers. What guy that we haven't named has a shot to have a real impact on the starting rotation in 2025?
I think those oft-forgotten names, the Nick Nastrini, everyone loved him. I still like him a lot. I think the stuff didn't end up being as good. I think you've said similar things. The stuff wasn't as good numbers-wise as I anticipated it being. That being said, he could still make an impact. Iriarte's another one. I liked him more than Thorpe in the C Steel, and that's ceiling floor arguments. When you're trading a stud, there's got to be a guarantee I can potentially get a stud back. Yeah, it's rough when it doesn't work out, the Moncadas of the world or the Eloy. When it really doesn't work, it sucks. But I'd want to find the guy that you can at least say, hey, this could be a top of the rotation guy. I think Iriarte could be closer to that. He has to throw a lot more strikes, but at the same time, I liked him better. So he's another one. Mason Adams continues to impress me.
I love Mason Adams.
Another one of those,
but he doesn't throw hard either, though.
Right.
I was gonna say, he's in the Cannon Drew Thorpe camp over there, where he doesn't throw that hard, but he gets outs.
He's going to be one of those guys where I could see him being like, hey, let's call him up. I don't know how much time he's gotten to AAA, but he could be one of those guys. They'll just call him up and let him be out of the bullpen. Out of that group of Thorpe, Cannon, and I won't put Martin in that group just yet, but Adams as well. It's like you can only have so many soft tossing right-handers. Like someone's gonna have to. I think that's the competition piece. Someone's gonna have to stand out and be that 3 guy or even the 4 guy. And I'd like to see that competition piece kind of breed into who's that going to be.
Well, I actually asked this question of Treasy in a podcast a couple weeks ago. When Kai Bush went down and he got Tommy John surgery, I asked him, I said, is it almost good luck? Because what's going to happen is he's going to lose a year, which that sucks and that's terrible. But some of this stuff will have settled itself. People will be pushed into, oh, we think you're this now. You pitched enough. We're pretty sure you're that. And stuff will move out of the way a little more. Whereas right now we have a blob of these young starting pitchers and like fighting to even get that opportunity. Like we mentioned a whole bunch of guys here who are basically ready right at we didn't even talk about Jake Eater or any, so there's guys right at the periphery and our rotation's already full and you're waiting on Drew Thorpe to get back in it. And so it's tough to even get in there. I may try to make the argument that some decisions will get made over 2025. Not fully, but guys' paths will start to get carved out here. And then you're going to start seeing, like you mentioned, you can't have all soft-tossing righties. One of them is going to establish themselves as, I am the soft-tossing righty. The rest of you guys are going to kind of fill in here,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, too, because like you point out, it's not going to be a winning year. It is a development year. You are trying to win baseball games, but this is a development year. I wonder how long they keep Bryce Wilson around. I wonder how long they keep Martin Perez around. I wonder how long they go with, a very veteran-heavy bullpen. I don't like maybe to the All-Star break and then just ship everyone off for whatever you're going to get or cut them or whatever. Because at a certain point, you have to be able to say, hey, let's slide Jake Eater into the lefty bullpen spot.
Right.
Or let's slide Mason Adams into that swing starter spot that Bryce Wilson will be playing once Drew Thorpe comes back. Like at a certain point, it should be very rookie heavy. It's going to be sink or swim, but you're going to have enough arms to mix and match with. To where it shouldn't be an issue to get them all some sort of innings.
We got to start seeing it. You're right. We got to start seeing these
back and forth, but you guys start seeing it.
Yeah,
like I don't want to see much of Martin Perez. Like at a certain point, we're gonna have to figure it out, and probably getting through the first half of the year. Hopefully, everyone's injury free, and then you can plan for the second half.
Yeah, Martin Perez's innings are a safety net for this group right now. And we do need them in theory, but at some point we're going to want to shed them because we're going to have to look at everybody. And I totally agree with the point there, Jordan. Last thing, how many wins would make this White Sox season a fun one for you?
I got the over-under at 49.5, so you tell me.
Boy. So did I. At least 50 is a good answer.
I think they could win 55 games. I truly think it's a bad team, but if things go well and they really commit to the development goes well, here's the thing. Martin Perez and Bryce Wilson in the rotation are not keeping this much higher afloat in terms of wins than just doing all rookies would have. You're doing it for health purposes. You're doing it for just development purposes.
Yep.
So I don't think when you initially make that transition away from them that you'll see that much of a drop off. It could be a leap in production is kind of what you're hoping.
Yeah, because you don't know the upside of those younger guys.
Right. I hesitate to say they sniff 60. I think 55 is a fair number to say, hey, you're still going to lose 110 games. But at the same time, I think this would be way more fun. because you're going to see the young guys. You'll eventually on the other side of the ball see guys like Caro, Teal, Montgomery, Mydroth.
Yep.
You're eventually going to see these guys. And I think the halfway point of the year is probably when they just go, you know what? This team is what it is. Veterans, we're done. We'll trade you. We'll let you go sign somewhere else, whatever it has to be. I hope that at like mid-year, they're like, here we go. We'll just push this out. We'll see what happens. Hope we got like 30 wins by the halfway mark. And then they can scrap 20 across over the next 2.5 months. Right. That's what I'm kind of looking at.
Wishful thinking here.
Right. It's wishful thinking. But at the same time, I think it'll be more fun. Again, a stupid thing today. The ball Oscar Colas hit off the wall in like the 9th inning. Kyle Teal scoring from first on there. Ran the bases really well. They pushed a little bit like they lost 11-3. But I still point out that moment in my head. It's like, oh, that was cool to see a prospect do that and care that much. But also the team clearly say, hey, get good reads off the bat, things like again, we made the argument on Sox 35th podcast where it's like, small things. Show me you're doing something different. And in an 11-3 game that your catcher of the future, one of the catchers of the future, makes it or scores on a double from first base, that is a positive to take away from that. And I think even at 55 wins, if we have enough of those moments, we won't look back and be like, that was a drag. I think there's enough to keep you invested this year compared to last year.
I absolutely love it. Jordan, thanks for building the White Sox rotation from scratch using the parameters provided. Remember, we ain't trying to be right in the show. We're just trying to understand. Anything you want to plug before you go?
Yeah, Sox on 35th per usual. I saw a couple of guys in the chat. Like I always say, it's hard to make content for this team right now. This is not just us. This is you, all the other guys.
The whole crew. Everyone who's out here doing this shit.
Exactly. Everyone who's out there doing it. Like, credit to all of you and all of us for doing it. But yeah, Sox on 35th, at Sox on 35th, the website. We're still putting stuff out. We're doing what we can. Yep. People like Brett and Maddie and Tim Moran, some of the people who are doing more visual content versus just writing. I'll try and put as much out there as I can. Between coaching and work and
job, yeah.
It's like, I'm running out of hours and I'm getting old now. And like I can't stay up to all hours of the night. Like I'm like 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm like, oh my god, I'm fading. It used to be like 1:32. I can't do that no more, and it's really a struggle. But the long story short, Sox on 35th, and thank you to you for having me on. I always enjoy doing this. I always enjoy the thought experiments for it.
You got it, Jordan, man. Let's get to this drink real quick before you go. It's Southside Mofo. He says, thanks, B, for facilitating my reconciliation with Jordan and Sox on 35th. You're welcome, Mofo. Mofo's a long-time 108 guy, so
I know,
you got it,
and
Mofo.
I saw that, and it's like, I'll be quick because I know we're done. But there are certain times you're like, oh, I just went on a tirade. Something like really rubbed me the wrong way, and it's like, there are people who are like, they deserved the blocks they got.
For sure.
And I know exactly why I blocked them. I saw that yesterday. Like, I have no idea why I blocked you. And I felt bad. I'm like, there was definitely a time like 2-3 years ago where I just got mad. And I decided that was the best way to take out my anger. So I apologize. I don't know what it was. If anyone else has any block requests, I'm happy to review them. But some of you earned it, just so we're clear.
I'll do that sometimes after a game. I'll put out a fiery take, and maybe I've had a few, and I'm like, I am going to block every motherfucker who disagrees with me on this.
I guarantee. I'm like, I had a few too, and it's like, all right, all of a sudden, you're all getting
goodbye. Speaking of goodbye, Jordan, great to talk to you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Beef.
You got it. That was Jordan Lazowski. Fun exercise. I'm glad we were able to do that. I hope all of you enjoyed that. Next week's guest, I don't have anyone booked yet, but I'll be working on that during the week here. In 2 weeks, on March 10th, I'll have Ian Eskridge back in here. We're going to talk some prospect stuff. So I always like to pick his brain and give him a little shit. Maybe I'll give him some shit about Lenine Sosa if he's still hanging around. Who knows by then? So that'll be the guest in 2 weeks. Next week's guest, I'll let you guys know soon. Thanks to Punky's Pizza and Pasta and all the 108 families up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments, and of course, drinks and tips. We'll see you on Thursday for the 108 podcast. We're going to reveal the Celebrity 108 tourney bracket and the number one seeds in the normal bracket. So, going to be a fun time. See all of you then, and I love you. Bye-bye.